Hi, and welcome to Hill and Ponton's Veterans Disability Blog. I'm Natalia Joffrey, the company COO.
And I'm attorney Ann Lynn Scott.
And as we mentioned before, we're doing this new format in order to do our part with social distancing, but we are open for business and want to keep putting this information out there. So, Ann, today we're going to be talking about VA disability benefits for Camp Lejeune.
Yes.
And we've heard about Camp Lejeune a lot off and on over the years. And so I guess the first question for the people watching is, why is Camp Lejeune famous? What happened there?
So it's very well known because of the contaminated water. So you'll hear, a lot of times claims are filed as far as the veteran saying, bladder cancer due to the contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. So it was water on the base at Camp Lejeune was contaminated with different chemicals. So veterans were using it to shower, drinking, groundwater got contaminated. So that is kind of, unfortunately, it is very well known for a not good reason.
Yeah, for a not good reason. So what toxins were there? Can you give people an idea?
Yeah, so there were, there's a lot of different ones. The big ones, there was a dry cleaning company nearby, and that's where a lot of the chemicals came from. So there were different dry cleaning solvents that got into the water supply. You'll hear two of the big ones that you'll hear are PCE and TCE. That's kind of the short name of it. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the long one. But those are some big ones. They're found in different chemical exposure cases. It's not just Camp Lejeune, but those are some big ones in the contaminated water.
Okay. And what's the VA doing then to help the people that were exposed to these chemicals, the veterans and their families? Because my understanding is not just the veterans. A lot of them were stationed there with their families.
Correct.
So what are they doing to help those people?
So that's something that is kind of unique or interesting to the Camp Lejeune benefits. There's VA disability compensation benefits for the veterans that served there. There's also VA healthcare benefits, and the healthcare benefits were actually available prior to the presumptions, which I'm going down another rabbit hole, but the healthcare expenses and healthcare services, that is actually what's also available to veterans' family members or dependents that they had to have been living on the base at that time. So they had to be dependents at the time of the water contamination, not now.
And that's huge because I know a lot of times veterans will tell us, everyone needs or everybody wants normally compensation benefits, right? Especially if you suffered a damage as a result of exposure. But a lot of them just want health care. They need to be able to take care of themselves.
Right.
So
and it can help
that's
with medical
unusual.
Expenses.
Yeah. And it's unusual, right? Because it's not something that's normally offered in other arenas.
Right. There's some healthcare benefits that are available to qualifying spouses or qualifying dependents when it comes to VA disability benefits, but there's usually that's tied in with a veteran being service connected for something. So their veteran might not be service connected for anything, but if they meet the requirements for Camp Lejeune healthcare related benefits, then those family members could still get the healthcare benefits.
Okay. And so what other benefits besides the healthcare benefits can the veteran or their family members get?
So the only other type of benefits would be the VA disability compensation benefits. So those are your monthly payments from the VA proving service connection for a disability and getting then those monthly benefits for that.
Okay. What are presumptive benefits and how does that work in relation to Camp?
Presumptive benefits, you'll hear it a lot also with Agent Orange claims. It's very helpful in the sense of when you're proving service connection, if there's a presumptive regulation that applies, that means it's easier to prove that a certain condition was related to service. So with traditional service connection or direct service connection, you have to prove an in-service event
Hmm.
In Camp Lejeune claims, that would be the contaminated water. You
Hmm.
have to prove that you have a current disability, um, say, for example, kidney cancer or bladder cancer, um, any kind of medical condition. And then you have to prove a link between those two.
Right.
If a presumptive regulation applies, then that link is automatically assumed. It's presumed to have been caused. So it makes it easier for the veteran to prove that something's related to service.
So, to use an example, you're a veteran that was in service at Camp Lejeune during which years? Which years are
So
applicable?
it's 1953 to, I want to say it's August of 1953 to December of 1987. And that's a good question because the service requirement part is very important if you are wanting to have the presumptive regulation apply.
Okay.
So for the presumption to apply, you have to have served during that time frame, and you had to have served for a total of 30 days.
Okay. So let's use this example then. A veteran served in Camp Lejeune, was stationed there, let's say in 1980. Fast forward 2020, he's diagnosed with kidney cancer. Can he presumptively get benefits now for when he was there in 1980? Or did he have to be diagnosed while he was in service?
So he did not have to be diagnosed while in service. And let me check. There's 15 different conditions that are considered presumptive for the healthcare side of things. There's only
Mhm.
8 that are considered presumptive for VA disability benefits.
Okay. Go down the list. We don't mind you looking at the list. Tell us what those are.
Okay, so with the VA disability benefits, the presumptive conditions, adult leukemia, there's aplastic anemia, other, um, I'm going to mispronounce this name, um, myelodysplastic syndromes, bladder cancer, kidney cancer. So in your example, yes, that would be presumptive.
Okay.
Liver cancer, multiple myeloma, and then you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Parkinson's.
Okay.
So for those 8 conditions, if you're a veteran and you're trying to apply for VA disability benefits, all you need is documentation of qualifying service at Camp Lejeune during that time frame, and then medical evidence showing that you have one of those conditions.
And you can have it presently, and then
Correct.
that's still you qualify.
Correct.
That's great. Okay, good. Um, how do you prove that you were at Camp Lejeune, and what evidence is helpful?
So the VA should have, service records showing a veteran was stationed there, or housing records. But I always like to say, don't rely on the VA. So anything showing, any kind of service orders that you might have, or even if you have things like utility bills, pieces of mail that were going to you at that time that shows that you were living there. That can be helpful. Um, you know, the
Anything that shows that basically you were there during those
right.
years.
There's no I guess limit or requirement on what has to be shown. It just has to definitely be objective evidence. It has to be more than you saying I lived there.
Right, gotcha. What common issues have you encountered with these Camp Lejeune claims? What should people be maybe mindful of?
I would say the biggest issue is if you're claiming a condition that isn't presumptive.
Hmm.
So if you're claiming a condition that, for example, uh, esophageal cancer is
Hmm.
one that is presumptive for the healthcare benefits,
Hmm.
but it's not presumptive for VA disability benefits.
Hmm.
Um, so there's obviously some kind of medical evidence showing a causation effect with that, but it just wasn't enough for the VA to say, okay, we're going to presume that that is caused by the contamination for benefit purposes. Unfortunately, at the regional office, a lot of times, if you're claiming for service connection for a condition and it's not presumptive and it's related to the contaminated water exposure, we see them denied a lot.
Hmm.
Just kind of they have their nice little box, and if it doesn't fit in that box, then they deny it. So in cases like that, I would just say don't give up, because it doesn't mean that your case isn't strong or that you're not entitled to those benefits. It just means that it didn't fit nice and neatly in the VA's little box, and some additional evidence just might be needed.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that even claimants sometimes put blinders on and they say, well, this list says that for esophageal cancer, I get health benefits and I don't get anything else. So that means I don't qualify for anything else.
Right.
That's not the case. You can appeal that. You're probably going to be denied. If I understand what you're saying is correct, you can apply for service connection. You're probably either going to be denied or be awarded a very low rating. But then that doesn't mean that that's the accurate decision. That can be appealed, right?
And you bring up a very good point as far as if you do win service connection, even if it's a presumptive condition and, it should be straightforward from the get-go, the VA messes up ratings and effective dates a lot of times. So service connection is huge because you can't get any kind of benefit without that, but it's definitely not the end of the road.
Right. Okay. And just one final thought, because I know that there are still a lot of people stationed at Camp Lejeune. And I guess it's important to address that because basically, if you were in service there after 87, the presumptive benefits don't apply to you, right?
Correct.
But it doesn't mean that you can't have a claim for any of these conditions or other conditions, right? You just then at that point have to go through the regular
Right.
process.
So at that point, similar to if you don't have one of the presumptive conditions, if you don't, if your service doesn't fit into that requirement, the time frame, or if you served 20 days instead of 30 days, that just means the presumption doesn't apply. That doesn't mean that you can't prove and that the VA shouldn't still consider direct service connection.
Okay. All right. Great. All right, Ann. Thank you so much.
Of course.
If you have any questions or want some additional information, please feel free to visit our website or call our office. Otherwise, we hope you'll join us again.
Thanks.